Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 15 of the Giro d'Italia. Now this stage at 178 kilometers, about 110 miles in length, when you look at it at the profile, it's flat for almost the first 100 kilometers of this stage, and then it's going to start climbing with two monster climbs, category 1 climbs, over 7% each, and then it's going to finish and summit today's stage 15 with a 22 kilometer long climb. The catch is when you look at the second climb, the beginning's really steep, but then the second half of the climb's not that bad. So when you start getting under 6%, that's when the speeds start getting really fast, and the last part of this climb is way under 6%. So when you're Team Ineos, when you went through yesterday's stage 14, which was incredibly exciting, with Bora Hansgrohe just lighting the whole race up and making a huge selection in the general classification, having Jai Hindley move up to second on GC, just 7 seconds behind Richard Carapaz, you know on the last climb, the last half of that climb, you have to have a team together, because when it's under 6%, closer to like 4 or 5 for that last half of the climb, the speeds are high. So you could get attacked on that section. Remember yesterday in the Butterfly Effect when I said I wasn't happy with Bora Hansgrohe's tactics of attacking on that climb? That's because that climb was way over 6%, was closer to 10, 15, and 20% pitches when Bora Hansgrohe's Jai Hindley was attacking. Now when you look at today's stage, that last part, being way under 6%, more close to 4 or 5, like I was saying, that could lead to big-time attacks with big-time time gains if Ineos were isolated, with Richard Carapaz being left alone up front without any teammates like we saw on yesterday's stage 14. So, very important, when you're Team Ineos sitting in the bus and you're the manager, you have to look at today's stage, and at 178 kilometers, you still have to have teammates with Richard Carapaz on that last 10-15 kilometers of the final climb all the way to the line if you want to protect the general classification lead. So when we get into the racing, we're 10 kilometers in, and there's a crash, and it's Richard Carapaz, Yates, and Guillaume Martin that go down in the crash. We'll see Richard Carapaz and Yates pop up really quick because they landed to the left of the road in the field, and right away both riders are on their radio talking to the team directors in the car. I'm sure they're saying, hey, I'm down, there's a crash, get ready, get me a new bike prepared. They'll get back on and start chasing. We'll see Ineos back there with Richard Carapaz and all the other GC favorites, such as Guillaume Martin and Yates, all locked behind the Ineos cars, getting a draft going back up to the back of the peloton. Now, when we look at the front of the peloton, it's Trek Segafredo, and Trek Segafredo are super motivated. They're attacking, and they're trying to get riders in every move they possibly can. Even with race leader off the back, Richard Carapaz, Trek Segafredo is on the tack and putting down power to the pedals, trying to get themselves represented in today's break. Now, there'll be multiple breaks throughout the beginning part of the stage, and when we get to about 100 kilometers to go, that's when we're going to see a group of almost 30 riders get up the road. In that group are massive numbers. You have 3 from DSM, 3 Jumbo-Visma riders, 2 Movistar riders, 2 EF riders, 2 Astana riders, 2 Trek riders, 2 Alpecin Phoenix riders in there. 2 UAE Team Emirates riders are in there because Costa, along with Perdon from AG2R, were the last 2 to bridge across to this mammoth-sized break up the road. Now, with those guys all represented as they start to climb, back in the peloton, Ineos back off the throttle. This is experience here. They know, again, the first climb here on stage 15 has just begun, and they need to have numbers when they get to the last climb, especially that last 10-15 kilometers of today's mountain. Now, when we go up to the peloton, in that group, they're riding okay, but not really gelling too great together. They're still gaining time on the Ineos-led peloton behind because Ineos, like I said, are just backed completely off the throttle. Up front, Mathieu van der Poel will be the first rider to throw in the attack from this group of almost 30 riders. Koen Bouwman will be the next rider from Jumbo-Visma, and he'll go over the top of this first Category 1, claiming maximum KOM points. He drops down the descent, and he's being chased by Mathieu van der Poel and Martin Tusveld from DSM. Those 2 riders will bridge up quickly to Koen Bouwman as they reach the valley. Now those 3 riders up front behind. The chemistry is kind of falling out of this group behind, and it's EF Education, Kudos, who's riding for Hugh Carthy back there, spending some time on the front trying to do damage control to the 3 riders up front. That gap up front now is about 1:30, and they're still just in the valley getting ready to start the second climb here. Category 1, monster 7% climb. As they're starting that climb, the GCN commentators are calling this race almost over. Every one of the commentators that I'm watching while I'm sitting on the couch are calling this race over, with the exception of Sean Kelly. Sean Kelly, the veteran in there, the king who's won tons of races throughout his career, and he is a GC rider, knows that there's no way this three group up here with Koen Bouwman, Matthew van der Poel, and Martin Tusveld can go the distance when there's so much power still left in the back of the group. Now, in that group, Trek Segafredo were aggressive throughout the stage like I was telling you. So when the climb starts, it's EF Education's Kudos that's on the front with 53 kilometers to go and 1.5 minute gap up to the 3 leaders. He'll ride at the front, start setting some steady tempo, and then 50 kilometers to go, it's Ciccone, Trek Segafredo rider, that throws in the big attack. He's followed directly by Santiago Buitrago from Bahrain Victorious. That group will become 4 with Hugh Carthy gets there and Antonio Pedrero from Movistar arrives. With that group being 4, they're on the pedals hard, and Ciccone, he's having none of it. We'll see Ciccone arguing with Santiago Buitrago many times going up this Category 1 climb with still 50 kilometers left at today's stage. He's on form again and going hard on the pedals, and with that effort to the pedals from Ciccone, we're seeing Hugh Carthy, EF Education, getting popped out the back as his legs clearly aren't on form right at this moment at the beginning of this Category 1 climb. Up front with the 3 breakaway riders, their gap is starting to shrink dramatically now because Ciccone is pushing hard. Now as the Ciccone group starts to bridge up, they have the original 3 in sight now. They'll bridge up to those guys. Koen Bouwman will drop immediately. Matthew van der Poel, he'll be the second rider to drop, and he'll drop quickly as Ciccone is pushing hard. 46 kilometers to go. Ciccone throws in a massive attack. Bahrain Victorious rider Santiago Buitrago goes with him. Ciccone again wants some help, but Santiago Buitrago's not feeling as good as the Trek Segafredo rider, so again they're arguing with each other. Now behind, it's Martin Tusveld that's fallen off the back of the pace and now starting to get gap to the 3 riders up front, with the Movistar rider Antonio Pedrero latched onto the 2 riders in front of him. Now just behind the group of 3 still chasing is Rui Costa, the ex-Road World Champion, and he has some company because Hugh Carthy's starting to try to find some legs. Hugh Carthy had the bridge up to Costa. Now he's on the front pulling hard to try to get back up to the front leaders. We'll see those 2 guys, and they'll bridge up to Tusveld, and then Hugh Carthy will accelerate hard on the pedals, and he'll bring back the 3 leaders at front before they go over the KOM. As they crest the KOM, they got about a 15-second gap on Rui Costa back there, and Tusveld, Martin Tusveld, DSM, is just trailing right behind. Going down the descent, the 4 leaders in front, we see Hugh Carthy opening up gaps down the descent. It's got to be hurting the legs when you're losing this much space through all the corners, and you could be resting back there. Instead, Hugh Carthy is struggling to hold the wheels in front of him as they're going down the long descent to start the last Category 2 climb of today's stage. Now behind, it's Tusveld that caught Rui Costa and flew right by him. Tusveld, the DSM rider, is flying through all the corners, and he'll be the first to bridge up to the group of 4 up front. Rui Costa is just behind. He'll bridge along with the DSM rider. Now they still got about 4 or 5 kilometers to go before the last climb starts, with about 22 kilometers to go. I'm sitting on the couch and I can't believe it because everyone in this group is still working together with Ciccone. And Ciccone has been on marvelous form throughout this stage 15. When the climb starts, we're going to start with 6 riders in the front group with Ciccone, Santiago Buitrago, Antonio Pedrero from Movistar, Rui Costa, like I said, he made it on, and Tusveld with Hugh Carthy from EF Education there to round out a group of 6. Now, as they start to climb, it's Ciccone. He's had none of it. We'll start to see him drift back. He's going to look right back in Santiago Buitrago's face as he's drifting back from the front. He'll slow down one more time. He'll do another look over at the EF Education riders, Hugh Carthy. When he does, he drifts off the back, and as soon as he drifts off the back, I see him drop into the down part of the bars. He's getting ready to start sprinting because he's in the drops. He'll fly by those guys to throw in the big attack. It'll be Santiago Buitrago and Hugh Carthy that follow directly. Now, again, these 2 riders have been basically taking pulls with Ciccone throughout this stage, which is the no-no because you can see Ciccone is on some flying form. I mean, he has been torturing Santiago Buitrago, the Bahrain Victorious rider, throughout the secondary climb of this stage. And now as we start the next climb after his attack, the first thing he does is start giving Santiago Botero the eye and start arguing with him. Santiago Botero's like, hey man, what do you want me to do? And shows him the hand and then starts pulling. Again, Santiago Botero, at this point in time, you can just be sitting on. Hugh Carthy's taking pulls too, and then Ciccone will throw in another attack on this climb. Now remember, the beginning part of this 22-kilometer climb is the stiff section of the climb. So this is what you have to do if you're Trek Segafredo. Once you get past the halfway mark, the climb is going to start easing up. So with that next attack from Ciccone, we're going to see Santiago Botero get popped from that group of 3, and now there's only 2 riders up front. Hugh Carthy, he's messing around, still taking pulls with Ciccone. What are you thinking, Hugh Carthy, at this point in time? You've already been dropped multiple times and fought to get back on, wasted energy going down the descents, open up massive gaps, pulling on the front before this last 22-kilometer climb came. And now when Ciccone is clearly flying, Hugh Carthy is still taking pulls with the Trek Segafredo rider at the front. It won't take long before Ciccone finally releases one more big attack and pops Hugh Carthy off the back. Now Ciccone, with 18 kilometers to go in today's stage, is solo up the road and opening up a 15-20 second gap immediately on Hugh Carthy behind from EF Education. Now with that gap opening, Hugh Carthy gets brought back from Santiago Botero. We'll see Santiago Botero grab a Coca-Cola from his team car. He's starting to get some calories back in him. Hugh Carthy is next to get some food down his belly here with 15 kilometers to go still. And up front, Ciccone's got his car up there handling bottles and gels. Now with those 3 riders, the gap is still about 40 seconds as the 2 riders behind just can't bring back Ciccone. With 10 kilometers to go, the gap is up to 1:30 now. So we know Ciccone's going to win today's stage. Behind what is the podium going to look like? It's Santiago Botero who dislodges Hugh Carthy. Then Hugh Carthy's legs fall off the bike as he gets caught from behind from Antonio Pedrero, the Movistar rider, who will come in the line for 3rd on today's stage. Up front, he'll start to celebrate. 1 kilometer to go. We'll see his arm in the air, and then a big celebration before he crosses the line, and tears after the line, of course, because he's Italian, right? So Trek Segafredo, with all of the action throughout this Giro d'Italia trying to get a rider in the break, it took losing the pink jersey on yesterday's stage 14 to win today's stage 15 with Ciccone up there for Trek Segafredo. Now, Ciccone has multiple wins. Today was a big one, though, because Ciccone hasn't won big for the last couple of seasons. Behind finishing 4th will be Hugh Carthy, about 3 minutes back on the stage. Guillaume Martin, that finishes about 6 minutes behind stage winner Ciccone. Now the field will finish almost 2 minutes behind Guillaume Martin. So that'll move Guillaume Martin up to the top 10. All of the favorites on the GC, though, will finish together as it was Ineos riding tempo throughout the whole stage. The only thing that really happened back there, we're talking about the GC favorites, was on the second Category 1 climb. We saw a little bit of action from UAE Team Emirates trying to split the group up. That made the group a bit smaller, but Ineos were never in trouble, always had the numbers throughout today's stage to protect Richard Carapaz's general classification lead here at the Giro. Now, just before I go, with hindsight here, because I got to watch the race and then go back before I came on here to shoot the butterfly effect, I wanted to go back before that break of 30 formed, and I wanted to see just what Ciccone was doing and how impressive he was, because the finish of today's stage, up all the category climbs here on this stage 15, Ciccone was something amazing on the pedals and just tormenting the riders out there, especially Santiago Botero. So I backed up the film before that group of 30 formed, and we're talking about 90 kilometers to go when the stage, and Ciccone was following attacks left and right and incredibly aggressive and riding the front, just blowing the field up. When that group of 30 went off the front, it was mostly done because of the power of Ciccone back there, who was just so aggressive along with a couple Trek Segafredo riders. So on today's stage, they were attacking race leader when he crashed 10 kilometers into the stage. And then when the original group of 30 split off, it was Ciccone really back there that was the aggressor, never missing anything and always in the right place at the right time. Throughout the climbs, the 3 climbs to the finish of today's stage, Ciccone was always in the right place at the right time. He might not have been overly pulling hard at the front of the group, but every time the selections were made with the EF Education, kudos, riding the front, splitting it to 10 riders at the front, Ciccone Ciccone was in that group and represented. Bach Mollema was the second Trek Segafredo rider in that group, and he came off on the second categorized climb of today's stage. But Ciccone was marvelous today and was having one of those moments where you just feel like you got angel legs and you can fly up any climb that is in your path. That's what he did on today's stage. Dominated the group of 30 up front and won spectacularly solo on today's stage. It was a bit of a sleeper, I'll admit, the last 15 kilometers of today's stage with just Ciccone up there solo and Ineos and none of the GC favorites back there attacking. But when you really look at today's stage, Ciccone was something special on the stage, and Trek Segafredo get their stage win here at the Giro d'Italia. Now make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect.